for ultra-high net worth Latin American clients. Paula received her BA in Comparative Area Studies and Political Science from Duke University and her MBA from Wharton. Everybody, please join me in welcoming Paula.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and I've spent a lot of time in the last 8 or 9 years that I've been at Goldman with the community, but it's fair to say probably more with the men in the community and much less with the women. So it's really exciting to be spending this time together and doing some of the work we need to do today, which I think involves educating folks as to what's gone on in the last year and a half, and what we think is going to happen, more importantly probably, and then answering whatever questions are out there, and hopefully we'll leave plenty of time to do that. So with that, I'm just going to jump in, and what I wanted to do was spend a few minutes just giving some basic definitions. Can everybody hear me? Some basic definitions, because I think we read a lot and we hear a lot on TV, we hear a lot of conversations, and words get thrown out, and I'm not sure that everybody necessarily even knows what those words mean. So here's a really basic one: economy. What's the economy? And that, how does that matter to us in the context of what's going on right now? The way to think about the economy is, in this country, we produce a certain amount, we spend a certain amount. And generally, we produce more than we spend, and that's a positive thing. That means the economy is growing, just like your home. If you bring in more than you spend, that's a good thing. There are some years where we spend more. That's a recession. This year, we're in a recession. Our economy is shrinking. We're losing assets in our economy. We're losing productivity, and that's a bad thing for sure. But it's happened before, and it's going to happen again, and we're going to get past it. But the most important thing to realize is that it's really just what's coming in and what's going out, and how do we get to a point in our economy, in our businesses, in our households, where we can flip the switch back to positive growth. And once we flip the switch back to positive growth, we will be out of the recession. And to cut to the chase a little bit, we think that will happen by the end of this year. We think we're going to be in a much better place this time next year. So really the question is, how do we get through what we're going through right now? So let me kind of move forward with some of these definitions, and then we can jump into some of the more substantive things. I think one other word that's been out there a lot is the credit crunch. And what does a credit crunch mean, and how did that happen? And what the credit crunch refers to is just the inability of people and of companies to borrow money. And part of what makes an economy grow and thrive is the ability to borrow money. So starting back well over a year ago, the ability to borrow money from banks and from other lenders began to dwindle. And part of the reason we're having such struggles right now in the economy is because that faucet has basically been shut off. And a big part of the goal of the government right now and of business is to get those taps turned back on again. And once that begins to flow, that's going to be helpful, because credit is very important to making an economy grow, the same way credit is important to making a household thrive. Mortgages, credit cards, sort of your basic tools of household management really involve credit. So that's a very important word that you've probably heard a lot, and you're going to continue to hear a lot, and is important to understand. Any other themes or words out there that folks are curious in understanding what they mean? If anyone wants to throw anything out. No? Right.
What is the difference between inflation and inflation?
Sure. So basically, inflation, what is the difference between inflation and deflation? Deflation is basically a period of time when prices are actually going down. So you could argue that right now we're in a deflationary time, because in a lot of places prices are cheaper than they were this time last year. Go to get a hotel room, go to certain stores, go to the gas pump. And there are a lot of examples of prices being lower than they were this time last year. Deflation isn't necessarily a good thing. It might seem like a good thing because, okay, prices are lower, it's not bad. But the reason we have deflation is often because there's less demand. People are spending less money, and therefore prices have to kind of come down until that demand is met, the lower demand is met. So deflation isn't considered a good thing. For an economy to grow, you want prices to gradually go up because that means that demand is gradually increasing. Inflation is the opposite of deflation. That means that prices are going up. And inflation gets a bit of a bad rap. It's considered, I think people think of it as a negative. It's not necessarily a negative because over time, and we all know this, we've all, been around, prices go up over time, always. Prices now are higher in everything than they were 20 years ago. Really fast inflation isn't good. That's what folks think is a negative. So if you have prices going up by a couple % every year, that's normal. If you have them going up 5–10% a year, that's not normal. So that's the answer to that.
What's the difference between depression and recession?
What's the difference between recession and depression? That's an excellent question. So a recession technically is 2 consecutive quarters of declining growth, of the economy shrinking. A depression is just a very prolonged and deep recession. And there isn't actually an official definition, funny enough, because we hear the word so much. And there's really only ever been one depression in the United States, and that was before our time. And the big question is, are we going to be in a depression as a result of this recession? Will it become a depression? Goldman Sachs doesn't think so. The general market consensus doesn't think so, but basically it would just be what we're in now for longer and worse. That would be a depression.
How do you get into this depression? Like, how does that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Where did it come from, or where did it start?
Sure. How do you get into a depression? This whole cycle that we're in right now, which basically began really began a year and a half ago with the subprime crisis, where there were too many people borrowing too much money against real estate that really wasn't worth what everyone thought it was worth. That was a domino, right, that got the ball rolling. And that has led to an increase in unemployment, shrinking in the economy, because when unemployment goes up, people can spend less money, right? And if they spend less money, everyone's business suffers, right? And I'm sure you all have seen this personally in your household or as it relates to businesses that you and your family may run. The revenues go down because fewer people have money to spend. That cycle, when it gets really, really bad, can lead to a depression. Right now, we have about 7% unemployment in this country, which is moderate to moderate high. If that were to go into the teens, and you had that much of the economy not able to go out and spend money, that many consumers not able to go out and spend money, then you would probably be at pretty big risk of getting into depression. Again, generally economists don't think that we're facing unemployment that is going to be that high. So that's one of the reasons people don't think this is going to be a depression. Does that answer your question? All right, I'm just going to move on to something else that I think is in your packets. It's this one-page little timeline. And this is really what I was asked to speak about, which is what happened in 2008 and what we think about for 2009. And I won't go through this whole thing, don't worry. Basically what this is I think a really easy way to encapsulate everything that's been in the papers for the last couple of years. And on the far left, you see sort of January through October of 2007. And you can see that we started out 2007, everything was fine. And then over the course of 2007, the subprime crisis began, and that began to escalate and hit other parts of the economy. And then going into this year, I think everyone's aware of what happened with Bear Stearns, which was a very, very... Are folks aware of the Bear Stearns situation back in March? That was when we saw the first real Wall Street firm have some major crisis, really due to what was happening in subprime. And it's fair to say that that's had a knock-on effect across the rest of the financial companies. So a lot of what you've seen happening in the last few months